folks, BCSG here. Today I'm going to start a new video series called Tackle Talk. I know it's not the most original name, but it is pretty much the most direct name I can give it. It's me talking about tackle. So yeah, it's going to cover me talking about tackle that I own, maybe some tackle that I don't own, interesting tackle that I might have discovered in the recent days, and stuff like that. So as we go through this series, feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think of the series, whether you'd like me to continue the series, whether you want me to stop. You know, I don't want to see this kind of stuff. I only want to see you catching fish. You know, feel free to let me know. And also let me know if there are certain things that you've seen me use, or maybe you think I own that you might want to know more about, and I'll be glad to make a video talking about it more. So as for today, I'm going to, as promised, I'm going to be talking about my new setup, the Jackson telescopic rod. It's mostly going to be talking about that rod and the new Shimano Vanquish reel that I got to pair with that rod. And at the end, I'm going to do a short segment comparing it to the Daiwa BBB, which is, you could say, my current and my longest standing setup. Alright, so for those of you who have been following my videos and my Instagram and my social media, recently you would know that I went to Japan about a couple of weeks ago for about a week. And so I'm just going to skip all the vacation stuff because that's not applicable to this channel, and just focus on the fishing stuff. I had planned to go to Japan to buy a Stella. I'm just going to get that out there. I've been fishing for years. I have never owned a Stella, or at least something of that level. I've always bought the low to mid-range. I mean, I wouldn't say, well, low to mid-high range. I have everything from a Sienna all the way up to a twin power. Well, not everything, but I have quite a few reels. But I've never actually gotten down to getting a Stella. It's, if anyone who's a Shimano fan who uses spinning reels knows that the Stella is the reel to get. It is like, it's the most coveted spinning reel from Shimano, aside from pure JDM stuff, which is also somewhat as coveted, at least in a country like Singapore. So yeah, I set out to Japan with my mind set on buying a Stella. I did not set out to buy a rod. I just set out to buy a Stella. I wasn't sure what size it was going to be. It was either going to be a 1000, a 2000, or maybe even a 2005, depending on the price, depending on what I decided on when I got there. So I get to Japan, and you know, I did my research, and I got pointed in the direction of one of the biggest tackle shop chains in Japan called Joshuya. And so I went to the one in Tokyo, and yeah, it was huge. That thing is like, I think it has three floors or something, 3 big floors of tackle. And of course, I took a look at the Stella, and I spent like an hour just looking at the reels, considering, trying to figure out which one I want to buy. And just as I was about to decide on what size I wanted for the Stella, I look one shelf below, and I see this reel that I've never seen before. You know, of course I've heard of the Shimano Vanquish, but I've never actually seen it. So I see this reel. It looks really good. It's obviously new. It's a 2016 model, and you know, I don't know, something about the reel just kind of caught my eye. I asked the sales guy to open up the display case and take out the reel. The minute I held it, I realized how light it was. I did a quick Google search, and I realized it was about 30 grams lighter than a Stella of the same size. Now, knowing the kind of fishing that I do, which is mainly ultralight, or even lighter than ultralight, weight is pretty much everything. I want to get the lightest setup possible, not just in terms of poundage, but also in terms of weight. So yeah, the minute I picked up the reel, not only did it look good, it was ridiculously light, and I think it's more than $200 cheaper, or almost $200 cheaper than a Stella. And on top of that, it was on discount. It was like a 15% discount. I'm not from Japan, so I get a tax rebate of like 12% or something. So I got it for a price that you probably never be able to find in Singapore. So anyway, enough about the reel. I think the main purpose, the main reason why most of you guys are here is because you want to hear me talk about the rod. So let me just grab the rod real quick. Of course, I handily have the reel put on the rod, and even, I mean, I just used it a couple of days ago, so everything's on. So yeah, this is the rod. It's the Jackson Bastard rod. Yes, that's the name, Bastard. And I'm not going to blip out the word, even though technically it's a profanity, but it's the actual name of the model. So yeah, I'm just going to say it whilst I can, you know, given the chance. So yeah, the Jackson Q-On, I don't know if you can see right here, the Jackson Q-On Bastard. The model number is BTS 645LT. So I assume BTS stands for telescopic spinning rod, and the 645 means 6 feet 4 inches, 5 section light rated rod. Now it's funny that it's rated as light because it says max weight 6 pounds, max line weight 6 pounds. Now max line weight 6 pounds by almost any definition is considered ultralight. But well, yeah, I mean, whatever, right? So onto the physical attributes. You've got a nice cork handle, real seat, split grip at the back. All around that, the handle is really comfortable. It's nice and short, which is very important if you're doing primarily luring and if you're doing primarily ultralight. You know, there are some rods that come in the 6 pound, 1 to 6 pound, 2 to 6 pound range that have annoyingly long butts, and that can get really, it gets in the way when you're trying to, you know, you're trying to do technical flip casting and all that. It just gets in the way. I don't really like it. So first thing I like about this rod is this segment right here. Now of course the second thing, and arguably the most important thing, is the weight of the rod. Now I just spent like 3 minutes talking about how light this reel was when I picked it up. This rod is perfectly matched for this reel. It's an extremely light rod. I think it's under 100 grams. I don't know the exact stats. I'll try my best to post links to all the products in this video in the description below so that you guys can check out the specs and stuff. So yeah, it's an extremely light rod in terms of weight. It's feather light, in fact. When I picked it up, I mean, there was a whole display case of telescopic rods in the store, and of course the Daiwa BBB, which is behind me right here, was in the case as well. So I got to do a live side-by-side comparison, picking up the BBB, picking up this rod, and there were a couple of others that were also in the display case, and this was the lightest rod in there by a long shot. Okay, so that's just the weight. Now if you look at the rod, the aesthetic of the rod, it looks like a standard 1 or 2 piece rod. I mean, you can barely tell that it's a telescopic rod because of the way the guides are placed. You see, the guides are wrapped on just much like a traditional guide would be, except that if you see, I can move it. Look at that. I can move it just like the Daiwa BBB, but they're not using rubber. They're actually using carbon, where the guide foot is tied on to this sheet of carbon that you slide on and secure like that. So this will be the first section, second section, third, fourth, and fifth. Another nice feature about this rod is it comes with Fuji KR guides. Now I don't know about the whole KR versus regular, you know, the wind knots and all that. I can say for sure that I've never gotten a wind knot on a K guide setup, so I think it works. But yeah, it's really rare to see a telescopic rod with a KR guide setup. That is really rare. I assume it's KR SIC, silicon carbide inserts, because SIC is it's very obvious when it's SIC. It's very polished. One look at the guide, the ring inside, you know whether it's SIC or not. All right, just to digress a little bit, I want to talk about this huge misunderstanding or discrepancy that I see online with regards to rod action. Okay, now there are 2 ratings on a rod that often get mixed up. One is the rod action and one is the rod power. Now, I'm not saying that what I say is the absolute 100% truth or a fact. In fact, I could be the one that's wrong. But the way I understand it is, these are two very different things, and these are the two things that even the most well-versed anglers mix up. First point, rod power is related to the line rating and the lure rating of the rod. It's got nothing to do with the action of the rod. Rod action, on the other hand, is a direct description of how the rod behaves when it bends. So, this is rated as a light rod. I believe that rating is wrong. It should be rated as ultralight, just based on the line and the lure ratings stated on the rod. But this is the action. Now, if you see, the rod bends in the first 20%, in fact 15 to 20%, the apex of the bend. Even if I held it a bit lower, the apex of the bend is in the first 15% of the rod. Now that means that the rod is in fact a fast to extra fast action rod. Okay, so once again, the rod power and the rod action are completely different things. Alright, so just to get that out there before we go on. Okay, so anyway, back to the rod. So I've talked about the action, I've talked about the aesthetic of the rod, I've talked about the weight. Now I'm just going to give you my conclusion and my thoughts on this rod in general. Alright, let me get this out of the way. Okay, so the Jackson rod is by far the lightest rod in my entire arsenal. I'm talking about one-piece rod, two-piece rods, telescopic rods. This one is the lightest that I own. It's a pleasure to use. The action of the rod is incredible. It's the way it bends, the way it loads when I cast, the way it loads when I fight a fish. It's a really good rod. It's extremely sensitive. Like, I'm talking, I can feel virtually anything, the slightest tap on my lure, I can feel it. When my lure hits rocks, I can tell whether it hit a rock, it hit a piece of wood. The guides definitely help. Of course, the reel and the line that I have on the reel helps with casting. It gets the lures out there, cast like a bullet. But this is not going to be a video where I compare which rod is better than the other, i.e. comparing the Jackson to the Triple B, the Daiwa Triple B. I'm not going to conclude that there is one rod that's better than the other, because both of them, I believe, are useful for different applications and for different, subjective to the scenario. What do I mean by that? Okay, everyone, I guess most of you have seen my review on the Daiwa Triple B, so I'm not going to elaborate on that. The differences between the two, the Daiwa Triple B is a lot heavier, or should I say the Jackson is a lot lighter. The Daiwa Triple B features K guides, the Jackson features KR guides. If you don't know the difference, chances are it wouldn't matter to you. The Daiwa is rated for 2 to 5 pounds, whereas the Jackson is rated for 6 pounds max. However, the Daiwa feels more like a 3 to 7 pounds, and the Jackson feels more like a 2 to 5 pounds in terms of power. The Jackson is a lot softer in the tip than the Daiwa is. The Jackson is also a lot more sensitive than the Daiwa. Meaning, the Jackson makes for a much more finesse rod than the Daiwa. So what does the Daiwa have over the Jackson? The Daiwa is seriously more durable. Just picking up the rod, you'll know exactly what I mean. When you pick up the Daiwa, now that's one solid rod. It's not going to snap on you unless you have, a 6'2", I don't know my weight in pounds. I'm 90 kilos. So what is that? 210 pounds? Yeah. So unless you have a guy this big being stupid and walking through the rod, it's not going to break on you. The Daiwa also uses rubber tubes to secure the guide feet to the actual blank, and that does two things. One of them is positive, one's negative. On the positive side, it's there's no way it can break. It's rubber. It's solid rubber. It attaches as you slide it down. It's all about friction, and it's not going to break on you. It's also not going to scratch up the rod blank if you push it in too far. Now the downside is being rubber, and you have these rubber cones lining the blank all the way down. It detracts from the sensitivity. It actually dampens the vibrations as they come down the rod blank. So that results in a less sensitive rod. So at the end of the day, as you can see, both rods are for different applications. If I was to recommend one rod, I'd ask you first, is this going to be your only telescopic rod? If this is going to be your only telescopic rod, I'd suggest you get the Daiwa BBB. It being slightly underrated meaning it says 2.5, but it feels like more like a 2.7 or 3.7. That's what I mean by underrated. It's underrated means it can handle a wider range of fishing. It's much more durable. It's a little bit heavier. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. It packs down smaller. The Daiwa BBB packs down to about this big, whereas the Jackson packs down to about 2 inches longer. I don't know if that makes a difference to you. It does make a difference subjectively to me. Depends on what bag I'm carrying. But yeah, so that's the differences between the two rods. That's my review on the Jackson and the Shimano Vanquish. I will try my best to find links of all the products that I talked about in this video and links of where you can buy them. It's not a promise. I'll try my best to find purchase links, and I'll put them in the description below. Alright, so that concludes today's Tackle Talk. If you like this new concept of Tackle Talk, me talking about stuff like this, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below. If you don't like it, thumbs down, comment below. If you learned something from this video, share it with a friend. Subscribe to my channel. It helps me. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.